Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and today I'm here to cover Men of War 2 and give you my initial thoughts on it. This is more of first impressions, a review of it, kind of covering more detail and going over more stuff is going to be coming out most likely next week. But I did want to give you guys an idea of my thoughts on the game and what I got from it from just playing the initial campaigns, which by the way, there's a lot of single player stuff in this. So for those who are worrying that this game was going to release with a lack of content similar to previous Men of War games, you don't have to worry. That being said, as someone who is new to Men of War, I will say people have always told me to play Assault Squad 2. Never got around to it. I always heard of issues with performance, among other things, and a steep learning curve. And also didn't have a big group or friends to play it. So this is the real first time I'm diving deep into a Men of War type game. If some of the stuff I'm saying is similar to previous Men of War games, then of course it's like, well, I don't know. I truly don't know. I'm just showing from my first-hand experience from a player who knows strategy games, loves strategy games, as my content shows, but has not, for some reason, not touched this franchise in a meaningful way until now. And it's weird. It's very, very weird. And I don't see that necessarily in a bad way for some of it, but for other bits, yeah, we'll get to it. First off, let's get to the breadth of content, because there are 6 missions for the main story section. So essentially, you have stories with the Germans, the Soviets, and the Americans, right? You have historical battles dealing with Operation Bagration, D-Day, and some random German missions that they have scattered about. Player versus AI sort of dynamic battle system in which you're going to be battling back and forth in areas with an AI of, well, you pick what it's German, American, Soviet, Eastern Front, Western Front, you pick, and you're going back and forth. If the enemy cuts off your supply, you're done for. And essentially it's this back and forth system. But if you are looking for single player content versus AI, this game has you covered. Now I will say, upon release, it is online only. There's a reason for that, we'll get to it, but the single player stuff has to be played with an online connection. They did say they're looking into making an offline mode, but just be warned, because I know that's definitely something that a lot of players can't necessarily, dive into because of internet connections and other issues like that. The main areas that I really focused on, because I played some of the single player missions that seem to go with more the historical battles, such as the ambush mission I played, which I died repeatedly because, again, I didn't know a Men of War game when they initially had the beta kind of run out, or sorry, be sent out. The single player that I played was the Soviet, a bit of the American, and a bit of the German. Okay. When diving into it, I was actually surprised the performance was actually really solid. I ran the game at 2K. I have a 3070. Again, my graphics card is not the best. I'll put specs here. But the point is, it's I would say it's more of an advanced medium rig. To be absolutely fair, this game also has a ton of options with controls, settings, like all sorts of different things. So if you're worrying about that and you still need to adjust it or adjust other things, this game actually has you covered, and I'm very thankful for that, because I'm always for games that allow you to take better control of how you play and kind of customize it. So the fact this game does offer so many different options is a blessing. I will say that is a very good positive. That being said, playing through the entirety of for example, the Soviet campaign in this, it's about 6 missions, and it deals with the initial invasion of the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa. From the Soviet perspective, you're dealing with the Soviet forces in the Kiev area of Ukraine, where in the middle and the north, more in the middle, the Germans are advancing. The south, they are running into a lot of issues, and eventually the center army again heads south, encircles the forces of Kiev, and it kind of deals with that. But this is definitely not a campaign where it has any memorable characters or interesting dialogue or anything like that, at least in the Soviet campaign. It does have some of the cringiest, I'm gonna be honest, bad voice acting I've heard in a video game. Example here.
Most of all, I'm interested in those privates, because there are surely quite a few among them that are close to us, such as factory workers or peasants. I want to know exactly how Hitler and his gang managed to trick the...
Again, there are cutscenes that will continue when the game loads into another scene. There are cutscenes that will like just end in the middle of the dialogue that should be continuing. It seems like the animations aren't that fine-tuned. Like the cutscenes themselves in theory are okay, but then compared to like even Company of Heroes from years ago or World in Conflict, and I say these games because they use in-engine. This isn't like Code 3, which did have in-engine stuff, but a lot of it was using art, right? It was using a 2D art or other things to kind of paint an image and set up and stuff like that. The problem is the fact, simply put, that it feels like it was rushed. There's a moment where someone is talking, and it took me a moment to realize, I believe he's talking to someone else, but the models aren't there. There's another instance where you have people come in, they're the same character model, so it's 3 of the same models talking to each other with 2 others, and because the facial features are not that distinct, you have a bunch of people talking. I had no idea who's who, and they're also, because again they're kind of trying to figure out what to do for animation, constantly smoking while talking. So that became very jarring to have someone talking and then just constantly smoking, but no interruption in dialogue or anything like that. I get what they were trying to do, and it seems like they were really trying to push it, but overall, if you're looking for Company of Heroes levels in terms of like even 2 had like in terms of like having an okay story, if you're looking for something like that, this game is definitely not it. Except the Americans, I would say, is slightly better, but not great. The German one in like the first cutscene is like trying to be this big sophisticated story, and I'll give credit, it is repeating a similar story you've probably heard in like, I don't know, Battlefield 5 and other games, where it's like the German officer that is part of the Wehrmacht that always hated the Nazi regime, that is it's near the end of the war and he's just trying to survive, right? It's kind of like that, and he's dealing with the fallout and politics and everything like that of this dying regime. Again, it's a good way to put it, just it is something that you've probably seen before, but hey, they really try to sell you on it in the first cutscene. It's not just the setup and the cinematography for these cutscenes. Again, like I mentioned with the face stuff, a lot of the assets for like the people and other things just don't look amazing. And I understand that there have so many units, right, that they don't want to increase the quality because they have quantity. And that's a lot about this game. This game has a lot of quantity, but not necessarily quality in terms of the cutscenes or anything like that. I will say the single player stuff in terms of the mission design and the battles and having a nice variety, so far every one feels distinct, and I'll give full credit where credit's due on that front. I also give credit to the fact when I'm playing these missions that there isn't too many, how do I say this, there wasn't like game breaking bugs for me in terms of like the game shutting off or, you know, freezing or anything like those lines. It was usually something in the game that was malfunctioning. For example, I would take an enemy, let's say AT gun for example, decrew it, and then a few seconds later it would explode. I thought this was weird, and then I realized that this was doing it for anything, so I got in a truck that's part of the campaign to refuel a tank. The problem was when I got out of it, the tank that had to survive was next to the fuel dump, so it exploded, and because it exploded, I had to restart that. I had to go back to the last checkpoint, which luckily there are plenty of save positions, so you can save constantly. So what I ended up doing was I realized that bug was happening, so I took that truck and I drove it at the enemy army and had it catch fire so that way you could burn their tanks to death. If you can't deal with a bug, use the bug against the enemy. That's what I say. Another example, at least with the mission design, is I thought you had to protect, for example, in that same mission, you had to protect a certain area. But what I realized was you just had to keep the tanks alive. So I abandoned my allies. They all died to the Germans, but my tanks got up on the hill and were just taking pop shots at all the enemy tanks. And I went back, stole an AT gun that I did not decrew because I didn't want it to explode, mostly. And I had it fire at the Jagdpanzer that popped up, which was hard to pen, but it penned just fine, and I was able to use the range and height to pretty much annihilate everything in the area. Again, there are multiple ways you can handle these objectives, and the maps themselves are pretty big. So in the single player area, even during these quote-unquote smaller scale missions for this story, while the story itself is not good, I will say the mission design and variety, and even the bugs that were annoying, and there are plenty of bugs. For example, I got stuck in a screen that literally my UI did not pop back, which was annoying. But again, a simple reload fixed that. At the very least, offers a nice variety and kept things interesting throughout the single-player campaigns I got to, right? I didn't get to all of them, because again, I just didn't have time to get through this, and I did not get a chance to get through all these missions. There are quite a number of missions. To kind of put in perspective, there are about, I think there's 38 missions for single player. Plus, they actually have a good tutorial overview. So you can go through and you can go and, like, if you're new to the game, they have in-depth tutorials for most of the features. Not all, and there's some things I wish they would explain better, like the trench system with barbed wire and other things. It feels like, to me, it like went through and I'm like, okay, you're telling me to build a trench, but it's making like this little tiny dot. How do I make a big one? I wish they kind of went more in depth with a lot more of the more advanced features, but I do appreciate them actually adding tutorial missions to kind of explain the game. That really helped as a player who's not used to the Men of War system. Now, I will say there's also an incentivization to actually play all the single player stuff, because you earn supply. Those not just supply, but you also earn units. Those units can be added to your multiplayer deck, and you can use the supply from the playing single player to buy special units. Again, there hasn't been like a monetization system, but essentially the more single player and more multiplayer you play, the more, and challenges you unlock, stuff like that, the more special units you can upgrade to your regiments. Again, I didn't really get to play multiplayer because there just, unfortunately, during times I played this, there wasn't really anyone online. But essentially, you can upgrade. Again, there's tons of regiments, each regiment having its own bonuses and negatives that kind of go with special units. Like, there might be a howitzer one that is really specialized in howitzer. Yes, you're goddamn right, I picked the B4 one. But they might be focusing on that rather than tanks. Or there might be one that focuses on anti-aircraft or infantry. They have different varieties with different perks and benefits and negatives associated with it. So you can technically build your army however you want and deploy it. Because how the game essentially operates is you have 1, 2, and 3 in terms of deployment. And 3 is usually the best stuff. 1 is typically the early war stuff. Or at least in the mission, like the weaker stuff. Because some missions, again, it's all in the same battle. And again, there are a nice variety of units. I wasn't disappointed the more I played with all the different varieties of units that I was able to use and how they all felt unique and different. There are things that I wish it told you ahead of time, or at least in other ways. Again, you can pause this game so you can kind of get an idea and a breadth of like, okay, I need to control this tank force, move it here, move the infantry here. And again, I feel like there are still issues with like, okay, I didn't realize that I turned off the feature to allow me to see cover because I was focusing on something else. Oh, you can control unit? Okay, how do I control this unit? Oh, okay, but I can't see through that bush, so in this situation, it's probably better for me to have the unit target the AT gun instead of me trying to fire at it because I can't see where the AT gun is, but the unit can fire through it. Also, one other benefit is the destructibility. So if there's a building, you can fire enough shots to go straight through the building and kill the AT gun, or just bring down the building. Or in a mission where literally the enemy's firing constant artillery, I was looking at the front, I didn't realize the entire forest behind me was just gone. And that's the thing, like, I can forgive the graphics not being the best if it offers a good amount of destructibility, and it does. It genuinely does have a good amount of destructibility. Again, I do not know how this compares to previous games, like, was it Ostfront, or, again, Assault Squad 2, which I referenced, the people keep telling me. But at the very least, right now, I'm at least like, okay, if you're looking for a game that is trying to make sure it has a number of good units, mission variety, you know, a interesting well, definitely challenging system to, you know, to work with and to master in terms of gameplay. If they iron out the bugs, they can't fix the story. I'm gonna be honest. That part, I'm like, okay, that's just not good. But, and they can't, I don't think they're going to fix the animations of the cutscenes. But if they can make sure that the pathfinding, for example, is better, because it's okay. I felt like sometimes I was like fighting with units for them to go certain directions, especially when in large groups, because they just wanted to go everywhere. But overall, from my first impressions, is it more positive or negative? Because I feel like I've been all over the place, but unlike something like Terminator Dark Fate, which I got a lot of blowback for being like, oh no, this game's good and all this stuff. It's like, I understand where people are coming from, but there are fundamental issues where I found in that game where I couldn't recommend it. This I can, even though I can say Terminator Dark Fate has better systems in place in terms of like the single player, like voice acting, and I can't say cutscenes because there's only like 2 in that game. But but I can say that this game is trying, and I appreciate the scale in which it's going for, even if it can't manage to hit that mark. But again, I hope to play multiplayer and give you a better idea. There's also, again, just some things to point out. There are replay systems for single player, tutorial, multiplayer. So for example, I realized I could get a good shot of a plane crashing down next to an MG. So I just went back to the tutorial mission that I played and got that. And I was like, oh, that's an amazing shot. Like, you can go and just automatically get replays and just look at it. It's pretty good, and it's stable. And that's the other thing. It feels like there's tons of content in this game. It may not all be great content, but there is a lot of content in it and a lot of features that other games, that, you know, they released at $60 full price. This game releases and it's like, oh yeah, we have replays. Oh yeah, we have like 38 campaign missions. Go. Also, we have multiplayer. Also, we have a ton of maps for multiplayer. Also, we offer up to 5-on-5 multiplayer with versing AI. Do I recommend it? Kinda. I'm kind of recommending it. Look, there are things in here that I can just say are genuinely bad, but it does kind of make me want to play more. It's weird. Again, I'll give a full review at a later date, but that's my initial impressions. Let me know what you guys think, and again, hopefully I have enough gameplay here to kind of illustrate what I am actually talking about. Because yeah, some of these things you're probably like, well, that sounds like I shouldn't get the game, but these other things are saying I should. I think me explaining this is going to give you guys the best idea if this is the type of game for you. If you can handle the fact that the story is something you can ignore and just enjoy the tactical gameplay, the large amount of options, the multitude of campaign missions of both large-scale battles, smaller-scale stuff, and also especially if you're like versing AI, just the sort of different features and sets there. A decent tutorial system, a great, so far, a pretty in-depth like replay and stat system, and again, I haven't even touched multiplayer, but there's tons of stuff there. I am hoping that the more I dive into that stuff, especially multiplayer, the better it's going to be. But like I said, I'll get into that more next week. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Expect content over the weekend when I play some more single player stuff and maybe catch some multiplayer. But thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. It's been Greyshot17, and I'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17, and before y'all go, let me give a special shout out to Patreon supporters Joey G240, Milam, Big Cooch, Aphyria, Ace, Pyro Shark, Tonybee 95, Epic Pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support in helping me grow my channel and support my channel and everything I do. Thank you, and to the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.